Welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Friday.
Yes.
Finally. I feel like it was never going to get here. Hello, Stu.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Are you're ready to do live TV?
I am mildly ready to do live television. Yes.
Okay, great. What's your top story?
My top story is we should stop rewriting history, and there's a big example to do with the presidential campaign going on right now.
We should stop rewriting history.
Stop rewriting it. When something happens, we should try to remember it the way it happened instead of reversing it and having it tell a totally different mythical story. It's a mild line I have, and I'm trying to draw it here.
All right, Jason.
I'm going to give the audience a treat today. So I haven't gotten permission to do this.
Topless?
It's a good thing.
No.
It's a good thing I don't have. It's a good thing I don't have one of my bosses sitting like right to the right of me or anything.
Yeah.
But as you know, both Stu and Glenn have chained me to a desk over the past week and a half. We're working a big special that's coming out next week. It's coming out on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Everyone's been working really, really hard. It's going to be awesome. But I'm going to give a little preview of something that we're going to talk about in the special that I worked on, and it's part of this is going to have to do with the Green New Deal and what they really want.
All right, a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So I know Glenn has had a really good experience with Relief Factor. I have as well. I have a bunch of back issues from a car accident that I was in that it's helped me with. And Jason, I know you're former military, so you were pretty hard on your body and your joints, right?
I couldn't. If you in the military, you get used to a certain routine. It just kind of gets brainwashed into you. One of that's running a lot. We ran 3 miles a day, pretty much every single day, and it just became something I did outside.
Yeah,
it just became something we did. Yeah, outside, up hills, a lot of hills. But if I couldn't do that, you'd feel like you'd lose this connection.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of military people feel that. I couldn't do that anymore. Once I hit 36, 37, I started feeling these pains in my joints.
And that was like 20 years ago.
That was like 20 years ago, yeah. So I heard about Relief Factor. They gave me their quick start pack. Tried that out. I was highly skeptical in the beginning. Took that for about a week or so, and I was already starting to get back into my running routine. It's amazing.
I know, and they told me that they said the same thing, like, take it the full 3 weeks, you won't start to see a difference, and I saw a difference.
Before.
Yeah, it was a little after a week, and I could already tell a huge difference. So if you are someone who is suffering from just constant daily pain, and you are looking for a way out, try Relief Factor before you go jump off the bridge. Go to relieffactor.com. Get that 3-week quick start pack now for $19.95. So it's $20. 70% of the people who take that 3-week quick start go on to keep buying it. It's working for the majority of people. It can work for you. Relieffactor.com. Stu, you said that rewriting history. I mean, I'm still waiting for you to prove to me that rewriting history is like a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I can prove that, but I would like to at least make my case here. Okay. So Joe Biden, by the way, raised $6.3 million his first day, outdoing even Bernie Sanders and the great Bob Frank O'Rourke.
Bob Frank, that seems like really quickly.
It's funny, if you look at the fundraising of O'Rourke, he did, I think, $6 million his first day and $9 million for the quarter.
Wow.
So that really dropped off fast. But I mean, these are good numbers for Joe. You wonder, is there excitement for Biden or not? He's coming in as the leader in the polls and should be.
It's his. I mean, come on.
It's interesting the difference there. Like we had Josh Hammer on the show this week, and I feel like there's two different paths here. Number one, it's Biden's to lose. Like he could definitely gaff himself out of this race. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm sure you'd acknowledge that. But it could be his to lose, right? Like he's, it's like the Patriots every year. It's theirs to lose pretty much every year. Where, the other way of looking at it is the high point of his campaign is right now. Like he's announced, the excitement's there, they're going to get it launched, and he's going to gaff himself. He's going to have to admit that he's not a socialist in certain things, and he's just going to get taken down by the party. It'll be interesting to watch over the next 6 months.
Before you get into your point, can I just piggyback off that?
Absolutely.
I mean, that is amazing to me what's going on in the party right now, this split, this civil war that's going on. And I've been looking at it kind of, some stuff that we're preparing a little bit in the future. But the Center for American Progress has been historically, that's their version. That's a less version of the Heritage Foundation, basically their think tank.
Yeah.
And they've historically been, very, very pro the Clinton camp, Obama, Biden, all of them. Well, one of their top officials just defected from Center for American Progress and went over to Bernie Sanders. Center for American Progress has been going crazy, going after, well, not crazy, but they've pretty hardcore been going after Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders and his people, including the people that used to work at that big-time establishment Democrat think tank, now they're firing back towards the Biden camp and this think tank. And I'm like, it's insane how many people are going to one camp and that used to be in the other, and the others are doing exactly the opposite. I think this is going to be a bloody primary.
I can't wait.
They are going to, I can't either. They are going to be eating themselves. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, they haven't even started yet. Like, still Pete Buttigieg has never had one negative thing said about him. That's not going to last forever.
Well, and think about all of the things that, Glenn has talked about on his show. He did the chalkboards on Joe Biden.
Yeah.
That stuff you can easily find that information. And I mean, certainly the socialist wing of the party is going to at least try to use that against him.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that's going to be more of a general election attack if it comes to that. I don't know why I think that. I mean, it's a lot of, it's people, like the Kerry family is involved in that. There's a lot of connections that it's not just isolated to Biden. And attacking Biden on those things is you having to admit that the Obama administration was corrupt, which is something they do not want to admit. I mean, they always say he doesn't have a scandal at all. He's free.
Yes, but I mean that socialist group of that party, they don't like Obama. They don't think he went far enough. He tried to give them advice, and they said, "We don't want your advice. Take it and shove it." So,
so it could come from the Sanders wing. I do feel like it would come from Republicans for sure.
Yeah.
I think the Sanders wing is going to say, "I know our activist voters. I know the people in this primary, and when they hear Joe Biden was against busing for integration back in the day, and then they know that Joe Biden was against X, Y, and Z, they're gonna hit him on he's too conservative for you. He's been on their side. He's voted for all of these things that now you hate because I mean they were Democratic priorities at the time, but now those Democratic priorities are like Republican priorities because the Republicans have moved to the left and the Democrats have moved to the left. So it doesn't look so great for Joe in retrospect on some of those issues. So I think that's how they'll go after him. But you're right, that very well could come out as well. I mean, he is definitely vulnerable, particularly if he can't handle it well. I mean, it depends. I think the one interesting thing about this, and this is, again, not even my point, but we're just going into general election talk, which I can always do. It's always fun. But one of the things that they're targeting, I think, maybe the most interesting part of this, and it's an advantage that only Joe Biden really has, is he didn't have to introduce himself. He didn't have to say, who am I? What do I stand for? He just had to say, I'm going after Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And let's be honest about it. It's the only thing Democrats really care about. Yes, would the Democrats like a socialist president? Sure. And if a socialist was running 10 points behind Donald Trump and Biden was 5 points ahead, I think they'd go Biden. Like, I think their number one idea is to beat Donald Trump with any means or force necessary. So I do think that they'll try that. I think where Sanders is an ideologue. Like, Sanders wants to win so he can be a socialist in office. Like, he really believes that. And there's 30-40% of the Democratic voters at this point are kind of in that same boat. So there's not a huge window. Yeah. There's a lot of people running on that socialist wing, though. Kind of if you look at different ways to visualize that field, you have those different wings, and you kind of feel like it's going to narrow itself down to probably 3 or 4 at some point. Maybe going into Super Tuesday. You might have 7 or 8 still in the race or 10 in the race, but like 3 or 4 that legitimately have a chance. You'll have one from this socialist wing. You'll have one from this, let's call it mainstream Democrat. I hate to say moderate because Joe Biden is not a moderate, but I mean, he compared to Bernie Sanders, he is, right? Yeah. And then maybe you have a couple of if it's a Kamala or a Klobuchar or somebody else, Booker, somebody else that kind of is in that field, like in the same way that a Marco Rubio was, where people were like, well, he might have a chance, but he never actually kind of got over that mountain.
I watched his. I thought he was going to cut. I remember you were watching it with me at my computer. We were watching. Was it a couple weeks ago when he was talking to I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was a union. It was a union event.
Construction workers and stuff like that. Yeah, and his speech.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but he is middle class Joe.
He is a lunchbox. Mm-hmm. His speech was exactly middle class Joe. It's exactly who he needed to be. That speech was exactly the same speech that President Trump gave when he was running, when he was in Michigan. That was the speech where, what's his name? Horrible filmmaker.
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore. That was when Michael Moore was like, okay, this guy's become president. Because he said, he's like, this election's about you. It's about factory workers. This is about the people that have lost their jobs. That's what middle-class Joe was doing. And really, it was exactly Bill Clinton back when he ran for president. That's all he has to do. He gets the moderate Democrats, if there's any left, gets all of them in the country. He gets all of the superdelegates that are scared to death of casting their votes for Bernie Sanders or any one of them. I just don't see how he loses this thing. I mean, I'm not saying the general, I'm saying the primary. I don't say he loses the primary.
First of all, I want to point out that in your analogy, you are the conservative Michael Moore. So that's number one. And I don't know if you want to admit that, but you just did.
How dare you?
But secondly, you were really impressed with that speech, and I was too. Biden is effective as a politician. He is not. Yeah. He's a dunce in some ways. He makes lots of mistakes,
which he uses to his favor.
He's able, and I like that's very Trumpian, right? Trump does that as well. I will say too, Biden is good in debates. I mean, even though what he did with Paul Ryan was just run over him with the car 500 times, and Ryan was making better points, but you couldn't even hear him. Joe just kept talking the whole time,
or cracking up over him.
Yeah,
laughed 50% of the time.
I do want to see a Biden-Trump debate. I do want to see it. I think it would be very fun.
I want to get to the rewriting history when it comes to Joe Biden.
So you're trying to hide my rewriting history point this whole time by just setting me off on this tangent. Okay, so the Joe Biden, it has to do with Joe Biden. So Biden is in trouble for many things, sniffing people's hair, plagiarism, lots of things. But he's also in trouble that he did something to Anita Hill. He did something terrible to Anita Hill back in the day with Clarence Thomas, and he had to call Anita Hill and apologize to Anita Hill for this terrible thing he did to Anita Hill. And the question is not whether he did a terrible thing to Anita Hill. The question is, will he be able to navigate the waters of this terrible thing he did to Anita Hill? It's just assumed that he did this awful thing to Hill and that she was right. And now we all realize that in retrospect, if this happened today, clearly Clarence Thomas would have been thrown off the court. He would never have gotten in the first place. Anita Hill would there be statues of her every other block? No, we're not going to do this. We're not tossing Clarence Thomas down the toilet. No, he didn't do these things. Let's remember what actually happened at the time. So let me take you a little step back. First of all, let me give you this statement from Anita Hill. This is Anita Hill talking about what she's commenting on Joe Biden's call. She says, "I cannot be satisfied by simply saying I'm sorry for what happened to you. I will be satisfied when I know there's a real chance and a real accountability and a real purpose." There is this liberal fever dream that exists that Anita Hill was totally right and just got screwed in this hearing. So let's walk ourselves back. First of all, let's start with what the climate of the moment was before any allegation came out against Clarence Thomas with Anita Hill. So this is before Anita Hill has said anything. Here are some of the quotes about with some of these groups and how they were going to target him. They said about Clarence Thomas, he is an extremist. He is out of step with the majority of Americans, and he's out of step with the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution. That's Patricia Ireland, who went on to be the president of the National Organization of Women. In Miami Beach, Florida, delegates at the National Education Association's annual convention passed a resolution that expressed the teachers' union's grave concern over Thomas's conservative positions on affirmative action, reproductive freedom, and the minimum wage. Why the hell was the National Education Association talking about that? Who knows? And then also from the National Organization of Women, Flo Kennedy, we're going to bork him. We need to kill him politically. This is before the allegations even happened. They wanted to tear this guy down. They knew it was vital. At this point, the Republicans had named many Supreme Court justices in a row because they had all of Reagan and into George H.W. Bush. So there's a real fear of this sort of overturning Roe versus Wade. The same stuff that was going on during the Kavanaugh hearings. They had that same mindset. Target him at any cost. Bring this guy down at any cost. So then we go over to what actually happened with Anita Hill. The FBI did a report on this. Here's what they determined. They determined that, quote, what she was complaining about had occurred based on her own timeline 2 or 3 months before she had ever met Thomas.
Wow.
It did not occur, at least how she said it occurred. And I don't believe it occurred at all. But the revisionist history isn't just saying Anita Hill was a saint and that Clarence Thomas was the devil. The revisionist history also is hitting Joe Biden here. They say, well, the kind of theory is, okay, well, Biden, helped the Republicans to trash this woman in front of the country. He was not an ally to women's rights, blah, blah, blah. That's what he's calling to apologize for. And if you notice the wording, Biden apologized for what happened to her, is basically what she said. I mean, Biden will say that Republicans were bad on that committee, but Biden, isn't admitting that he did anything wrong himself, which of course, he's a politician, he probably never will. But that's what the left is accusing him of. So let's go through, what did Biden do at that time? Here's some of it. The chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Joe Biden, assisted the feminist assault on Thomas. The Senate had confirmed the 43-year-old judge for other positions, so there was no need for a thorough investigation. Yet Biden delayed the hearings until late September. It was an intentional delay, remembers former Senator Hank Brown. It was designed to accommodate the people who went after him. So Biden not only delayed it, he played right into their hands and made it possible for them to present all this information. Goes on, feminist groups demanded that Democrats reopened the hearings, and Biden complied. What followed was a circus, days of testimony in which Hill enumerated Thomas's supposed sexual transgressions, and senators awkwardly asked Thomas to discuss them. This led to probably the most memorable moment of the entire hearing, where Clarence Thomas, who's put on trial for something I think he clearly did not do, and certainly was not portrayed accurately, his character was being assaulted and assassinated, really in front of the entire nation, and here's what he said.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Wow. I mean,
Never get tired of hearing that. That is so powerful.
he's so good and so right, and we should remember that he's gone on to be the best Supreme Court justice he could possibly have imagined. I mean, it was a fantastic pick. To finish the Biden part of this, when doubts about Hill's veracity started mounting, Biden closed the hearings. Even the news media backed off. So he didn't close the hearings until everyone was like, oh crap, this isn't actually playing out the way we thought it would. And even the media ran away from the story. So if you're going to blame Joe Biden, you also got to blame the media for not doing this. The point here is that, number one, we cannot use revisionist history to make Anita Hill into some mega hero. We cannot use revisionist history to turn Clarence Thomas into the devil. And we cannot use revisionist history to make Joe Biden look like he did anything wrong for the left. He was absolutely hand in hand helping the National Organization of Women and many other groups assassinate the character of Clarence Thomas unfairly. Joe Biden had a massive hand in that. He is guilty of that. He is responsible for it partially. And the idea that he didn't do enough is completely revisionist, and it is honestly just an attack from the far, far, far left who don't want to see Joe Biden get the nomination now. Yeah. And Anita Hill, who's gone through, I'm sure your ears have. I mean, she's been praised by the left almost universally. But look, this is her moment, right? She's got this moment to take down this guy she's been pissed at for 30 years. I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I think what he did in those hearings were actually really bad for the country and dishonest, and he does not deserve the presidency for that reason. But he should get the Democratic nomination. He did exactly what he should have done if you're a Democrat. Not tell the truth. Push against someone's real strong character and try to assassinate it. And this revisionist idea that he was on the side of Clarence Thomas or on the side of men to destroy women, it's completely insane. And Clarence Thomas was innocent.
All right, back in a minute. Yeah, I know. I remember when I kept reading that headline. I'm like, he apologized to Ms. Hill, but it's not enough. And that was my first. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to thank our sponsor, Home Title Lock. So it was a shock to me that one of the fastest growing crime in America is home title fraud.
Them, yes,
it's insane.
It is. I mean, really, it hadn't even popped on anyone's radar until about 10 years ago. Like, it had almost never happened. And the FBI wound up releasing a report, and they called it house stealing. which I think is such a terrible name for it. It's like, I don't know, call it house stealing? I don't know, I got nothing.
Oh yeah, they steal your entire
yes,
house.
and
They
that's
pick it up and take it away.
Yeah, home title fraud kind of describes it better. Yeah, I mean, the idea is they can take these documents, they can do, it's really easy. It's a few pieces of paperwork, it's transferring, it's a fake notary stamp. It can all be done for under $100 pretty easily. And it's scary because once it's done to you, if they can get it done and you don't catch it, which how would you catch it? You're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you have a house and especially I think it's about a third of houses in the United States are actually paid off. If you have an elderly relative, if you've been able to pay off your house, or you just have a decent amount of equity, you're a prime target for this. They actually target people who've gone through obituaries. I mean, it's a situation that you do not want to get involved in.
Yeah, and you would not know if you've been a victim or if one of your family members have been a victim unless you go to HomeTitleLock.com. Get a $100 search for free right now. See if you've already been compromised when you sign up at HomeTitleLock.com. All right, Jason, you said you're going to give just a sneak peek into this socialism special.
Yeah, so again, just for the time, it's coming up on Wednesday. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And it's called Socialism: A Warning from the Dead. And a lot of this kind of goes around something that Glenn discovered, which is absolutely amazing. It really shows how socialists can take over a country, and they can do it all legally within the framework of the Constitution, within the framework of Congress, everything. It's actually terrifying. And it's written by communists that pulled it off in the past. And so we kind of go through that, and we also discuss some of the things that are going on today, which look very suspiciously like they fit exactly in the mold in that playbook that socialists in the past have used. It's been used in places like Venezuela, almost to a T, and the things that are happening today are actually pretty frightening. When you look at it and you see it all laid out, Glenn's going to do all that. It's absolutely insane what you're going to hear. But for a little sneak peek of that, I wanted to look at something that I was looking at as part of the research for that show. And this popped up. It's absolutely amazing. We've been looking at the Green New Deal. And, some people have noticed, well, what are all these extra things that are thrown into the Green New Deal? Like if it's just it's critical that we pay attention to rising temperatures, and sea levels rising and all that stuff. Like we should just really just look at, ways that we can, identify what the problem is and we can fix it and move on and then fix this problem, basically actually kind of concentrate on the environment if that's what you're really scared about. But there's all these other things in there. Well, there's this CBS interview that I just ran across. It's with a spokesman for a group called the Sunrise Movement. And they work with Justice Democrats, that's AOC's campaign chairman or chief of staff, I believe.
They recruited her to be the candidate, right?
Right. And so now they're also the ones that they did the sit-in for Nancy Pelosi's office that they got kind of famous for, and now they're really trying to push the message of the Green New Deal. Well, this is a CBS interview where they pick out their spokesman and they're like, look, what are the things that you can get done right now for the Green New Deal? What's the most important thing? And she answers.
What are some of the specific things you can point to that you think are practical?
We want a federal jobs guarantee. We want to expand labor rights. We need to expand Indigenous peoples' rights. We need to give workers consistent access to health care. We need to provide child care. We need to introduce regenerative agricultural practices.
So that's a platform that goes beyond the environment. What's this? So you're not talking about just approach in a Green New Deal. You're not talking about just the environment then.
That's correct.
It's amazing. I cannot believe she actually called her out on that too, though. But she legitimately wanted to know what are the things you can get done to help the environment, and she didn't even talk about the environment.
Well, she said regenerative agricultural.
Yeah, that's the only one that was it. That was about it.
Absolutely
Short
insane.
list.
Which, if you asked her
Absolutely
how do you
insane.
accomplish that, she'd probably.
I love how the
sorry?
number one thing she says is a pragmatic goal is a federal jobs guarantee. Wait a minute, that's like your biggest ticket item.
Because and that's a great point, Stu, because that completely explains the Green New Deal. This is a socialist jobs grab. That's all this is, and it's been done before. They've done this in the past, and Glenn's going to walk everyone through it Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Nice.
Look at
Nice
that little
sell. Look at that sell. Dude.
bow.
Wow, I'm going to subscribe.
In case you missed it earlier this week, I had a pleasant little man on the internet go and try to dox me from a joke that I made on Twitter over a stupid wooden fork. But if you missed it, you can find it on my YouTube channel. It's a new YouTube channel that we just launched. It's called Sara Gonzales unfiltered. And as it says, you can subscribe for free on YouTube.
I usually pay for all my YouTube subscriptions, but I'm glad this one's free.
I mean, this one is free.
Yeah.
You got to go subscribe.
I got to. You got to see Angry Sarah. I love Angry Sarah. It's a lot of fun.
Doesn't come out much, but when she does, watch out.